Another example of watershed pollution exists on the Gilpin grasslands and forest, where cattle have severely damaged and polluted the stream and water holes. Barry Brandon of Grand Forks shows how serious the situation is.
The grassland ecosystem in the province of British Columbia is described and advertised as the most threatened in the province. Less than 1% of the land base, and a considerable portion of that is privately held. It's also home to most of our threatened and endangered species. The Gilpin grasslands, located between Grand Forks and Christina Lakes, is a small special ecosystem. It's been recognized as important by 3 provincial governments. 2 land conservancies have made significant private land purchases, and yet we have some very, very serious management challenges. And you're going to see now a small microcosm of the biggest challenge on Gilpin, water management, or the lack thereof. In 1974, Second Century Now Nature Trust signed a 99-year lease with Fish and Wildlife staff. Unfortunately, for reasons I can't quite comprehend, it wasn't until the summer of '08 that the community found out that a 99-year lease was signed with Fish and Wildlife staff that came with a covenant that in effect that said that this land should be well taken care of. And if you look at this very important water source, you're going to see 2 things. You're going to see an attempt made 30+ years ago to manage and safeguard some of this small spring dugout, and you're going to see today's standard where there is no attempt at all. When you examine this water hole at this time of the year, you'll find a lot of the shrubs critical to wintering wildlife are badly compromised. Anytime you have water, hot weather, cover, the cows are going to stay here. The bears and other animals rely on this water source. On a number of occasions I see their tracks to here, but they don't water. In the fall, the bears come down low towards the city and they feed upon the chokecherries and the hawthorn berries. In '07, I took water samples on this range, and on this particular spot, the sample I took was over 120,000 colony forming units. The certified lab I send my results to informs me and everyone else who takes water samples that the safe drinking water standard in our country is less than 1 less colony forming unit per 100 milliliters. Evidently, a colony forming unit is equivalent of a blob the size of your small fingernail under the microscope. So, for a small amount of resources, we can do a lot better. And without a wildlife management area and new players who care, we're going to have same old forever.
In the Rock Creek area, Alan Grant illustrates the negative impact of cattle on water quality and human health. He also shows how cattle grazing increases bacterial pollution in water, whereas wildlife does not. His results on a chart show the rapid increase when cattle are being pastured compared to when they are absent. Cattle fences are creating barriers for wildlife and many legitimate non-timber human uses. Similarly, the public is rapidly losing access to their public lands as road closures increase. There is growing concern that BC's public forests are managed primarily as timber and livestock farms with little regard for other forest and watershed values. The public's concern corresponds with a 1991 government review of the timber supply and the management process for granting annual allowable cuts. It found there was a lack of recognition of non-timber resources and values such as fish and wildlife habitats, biodiversity, visual quality, recreation, and sensitive resources such as community watersheds. It appears evident that better management systems are required in the long-term interests of all the forest and watershed values and the viability of local small businesses. If major improvements are not made quickly, the once diverse and bountiful forests of the mid-1850s will become full-scale timber and livestock farms for the benefit of a few private and corporate interests. Forests and watersheds on Crown land, which are the real wealth of present and future human generations, should not be squandered by private industries. To improve this undesirable situation, the public needs to become knowledgeable about better forest and watershed management alternatives that are available and proven. They have been shown to have superior social, economic, employment, and ecological benefits to the current clear-cut management systems. Let's examine some of these better management systems. At the Creston Community Forest, respected forester Jim Smith discusses the sustainable and holistic system of forest and watershed management.
Well, you know, John, the community of Creston has had a very active public with regards to forest management for many decades now. People here, the watersheds particularly, are important to the community economically. They supply water to the town, to the orchards, and to the Columbia Brewing Company, which of course makes kokanee beer. So in the mid-70s, the very first public advisory committee to the Forest Service was formed here by Dr. Bruce Fraser. That committee was involved with the industry, involved with the Forest Service and Ministry of Environment in managing the forests associated with the Creston Valley up until the formation of the community forest in 1997-1998. And the community here decided to participate in the new community forest concept in 1997 because they were tired of reacting always to proposals by industry, and they saw an opportunity to be in control of the forest surrounding Creston that was important for watersheds and views and wildlife, and eventually fire interface. And so in 1997, the community of Creston formed the Creston Community Forest under a corporation called the Creston Valley Forest Corporation. And the Forest Service awarded the contentious watersheds and some surrounding forests, like where we're at right now, up on Goat Mountain, right above the town of Creston, as part of our operating area. All highly sensitive, all very controversial. And I wound up being the manager of the community forest in 1998. And we told people when we started out that they needed to be involved and they needed to be concerned with this community forest and how we operated. And we also told them they shouldn't trust us until they've seen what we can do. And so we sort of took an opposite approach from the normal approach of trying to convince people that we could be trusted. We said, look, we're untried, you need to be concerned and involved. And so what happened was, rather than starting to harvest and start our operations in contentious watersheds, we decided to show what could be done with alternate forms of forestry on the mountain right above Creston, a mountain called Goat Mountain or Arrow Mountain. It has two sort of names. And we're standing in that forest now, looking at the results of that forest management. And what happened was, the first several years, we put in a variety of silvicultural systems. We thinned the forest, taking about 1/3 of the trees in a cut called an intermediate cut. We did some slightly heavier cutting, where we left about half the trees in silvicultural systems called shelterwood cutting.